At 7:14 p.m., an old woman in Moscow hears three soft knocks. She thinks it is the gas inspector. It is not. Outside her apartment door are two men and a brown folder. One of them smiles like he has done this 100 times before. The other one does not smile at all. Inside the folder is her name, her age, her address, her pension, her debts, the number of rooms in her flat, and the estimated price of her life if it were converted into square meters. They do not want her jewelry. They do not want her television. They do not want the small pile of cash hidden behind the dishes in the kitchen. They want the walls around her. And by the time she understands that, the process has already started. This story begins in Russia, but the mechanism is not Russian. Wherever housing becomes wealth, lonely people become targets. In the years after the Soviet Union collapsed, millions of apartments that had once belonged to the state became private property. Overnight, people who had almost no cash were suddenly living inside assets worth more than everything else they owned. For many, it was freedom. For predators, it was a map. A kitchen, a hallway, a two-room flat, a balcony, a weak door lock. All of it could now be sold, transferred, pressured, stolen, or buried inside paperwork. In nature, a home protects a body. In a market, a home becomes a number. And numbers attract hunters. In Russia, people had a phrase for criminals like this: shadow realtors. Not normal agents, not people helping families buy apartments. Shadow realtors were the hidden predators of the housing market. They did not look for homes. They looked for people who could be pushed out of them. This is how a home becomes prey. Level 1. The spotter. You are 19 years old. You have no career, no real plan, and not enough money to refuse small offers. A man tells you he needs help collecting addresses. Nothing serious, just walk through old neighborhoods, look at old buildings, notice things most people ignore. So you walk. You learn that a stairwell can tell you more than a person does. A broken mailbox means nobody is watching. A stack of unpaid utility notices means pressure. A door that nobody knocks on means loneliness. A drunk neighbor means information. A pensioner carrying groceries alone means vulnerability. Your job is not to steal anything. Not yet. Your job is to find weak defenses. Elderly residents living alone, men who drink, people with debt, apartments with no relatives nearby, doors that open too easily, people who answer every question because nobody has asked them anything in months. Every address becomes a file. Age, habits, health, family, documents, square meters. You get a little money for each lead. More if the lead becomes a deal. The first time you earn cash from someone's loneliness, it feels strange. The second time, it feels easier. The third time, it feels like work. Level 2. The trusted helper. You are 22 now, and you no longer just watch from the stairwell. You knock. You come with a smile, a paper, and a story. Sometimes you say you are from social services, sometimes from legal aid, sometimes from the housing office. Sometimes you do not need an official story at all. You simply become useful. You carry groceries upstairs, you help fill out forms, you buy medicine, you fix a leaking tap. You explain pensions, utility bills, benefits, and signatures. You sit in the kitchen and drink tea. You listen to stories about dead husbands, absent children, and neighbors who never visit anymore. That is the trick. First, become relief. Then, become necessity. One old woman trusts you because you explain everything slowly. Another trusts you because you bought her blood pressure pills. Another trusts you because you promised to protect her from scammers. The cruelest part is that you do not look like the danger. You look like rescue. And once you become the only reliable person in someone's life, a signature becomes easier to get. The victim thinks they are accepting help. You know they are giving access. Level 3. The paper. You are 25, and now you understand the real weapon. It is not the fist. It is not the knife. It is not even the threat. The real weapon is paper. A stamp, a notary seal, a registrar's signature, a forged passport page, a power of attorney, a sale agreement, a medical conclusion, a document that moves faster than the victim can understand. This is where trust becomes property. The language always sounds clean. consent, representation, transfer, purchase, registration. But underneath the clean language, something very simple is happening. A person is being separated from the only safe place they have. The apartment may change hands before the owner understands what the document meant. Sometimes the same flat is transferred, resold, and buried under layers of paperwork so quickly that by the time anyone complains, the trail is already foggy. That is the genius of paper crimes. The violence does not look like violence. It looks like administration. It looks like procedure. It looks like someone doing their job. Level 4. The pressure man. Paper alone does not always work. Some people hesitate. Some refuse to sign. Some realize too late that the friendly helper was never really helping. That is when the apartment must become unlivable. Not through one dramatic attack, through small, deniable damage. The heat goes out in January. The water stops for maintenance. The hallway light breaks and stays broken. A window cracks and nobody repairs it. Strangers appear in the stairwell at night. The mailbox is ripped open. The lock suddenly stops working. A person who should not be there starts acting like they belong. Nobody says, "We are forcing you out." That would be too obvious. Instead, life simply becomes unbearable. One problem after another. One night after another. One small humiliation after another. Until the owner no longer wants to protect the apartment. They want escape. That is when the offer arrives. Not the real market value, not even close. Just enough money to look like a way out. Maybe the apartment is worth $60,000. Maybe the owner sells for $8,000. Maybe less. The difference is where the machine eats. You call it pressure. The victim calls it hell. And hell has a price. Level 5. The closer. You are 29, and now you sit at the table. Not with the victim, with the network. A notary, a broker, a district cop, a doctor, sometimes a social worker, sometimes a clerk, sometimes a person with access to records nobody outside the system should see. Everyone has a function. One finds the owner. One builds trust. One prepares the file. One confirms confusion. One finds a buyer. One makes the paper look normal. One makes the complaint disappear. You stop thinking of crimes as acts. You start thinking of them as workflows. And then comes the scene nobody outside the system sees. An old man sits in a narrow office under fluorescent light. His hands shake. His coat still smells like winter. A cup of tea steams between you. You tell him the paper will protect him from debt collectors. The notary does not explain it properly. The old man looks at you, not at the document, because you are the person he trusts in the room. He signs where you point. 3 signatures, 8 seconds each. By evening, his home belongs to someone else. There is no blood in that room. That is what makes it worse. The violence happened earlier, in the loneliness, in the pressure, in the fear, in the months of making him dependent on the very people stealing from him. The paper only closes the trap. Level 6. The cleaner. You are 33, and the remaining cases get uglier. The easy targets are gone. The next ones have suspicious neighbors, distant relatives, better questions, and documents that do not move quietly. So the system adapts. A man is declared mentally unfit after convenient examinations. A woman disappears for several days and returns ready to sign. An alcoholic dies, and the papers move before the funeral. A relative arrives too late and finds that the apartment is already gone. Nothing is ever simple enough to prove. That is the point. Some schemes end in fraud, some in coercion, some in violence, some in murder. But the machine is built to keep the center clean. The person who knocks on the door is not the person who sells the apartment. The person who sells the apartment is not the person who forged the paper. The person who forged the paper is not the person who threatened the owner. The person who threatened the owner is not the buyer on the final contract. Everyone touches only one part. No one holds the whole crime, except people like you. Level 7. The businessman. You are 39, and you no longer climb stairwells yourself. You sit in a glass office with polite lighting. The sign outside says property consulting. The website uses clean words: investment, redevelopment, distressed assets, legal support. Everything looks respectable now. Bigger, too. You buy distressed apartments through intermediaries. You track divorces, inheritances, unpaid loans, addiction, dementia, hospitalizations, and lonely owners whose children live far away. You know which districts will become expensive. You know which buildings developers want. You know which officials move slowly and which ones move fast. One apartment is good. A building is better. A whole entranceway is better than that. You pressure 3 owners, then 5, then 9. Once enough units fall, the rest usually follow. A normal building becomes a target, then a package, then an opportunity. Developers call it assembly. Lawyers call it restructuring. Investors call it opportunity. But the mechanism underneath never changes. Find vulnerability, apply pressure, extract property, hide behind paper. You have money now. A German car, a watch, a dacha, a clean office. People who call you by your patronymic. But real estate predators share one problem with all predators. They leave patterns, and patterns become cases. Level 8. The Hunted. You are 46, and investigators finally map the network. A missing pensioner connects to a forged sale. A forged sale connects to a notary. The notary connects to a broker. The broker connects to a shell buyer. The shell buyer connects to a company, and the company connects to you. By now, the world has changed. Digital registries are stronger, relatives know more, journalists investigate more. Police sometimes ignore the system, but not always. The old invisibility is harder. The scams still exist, but the shadows are thinner. One morning, officers arrive before sunrise. They take computers, folders, stamps, phones, and hard drives. A television crew films boxes leaving the building. Your face is blurred, but your system is suddenly visible. And that is the final irony. For years, you sold fear to people terrified of losing home. Now you finally understand what a home really was. Not square meters, not an asset, not a line in a registry. A home was the last border between a person and the world. The place where an old woman kept medicine in the kitchen. The place where a widower still heard his wife's voice. The place where someone poor could still close a door and say, "This is mine." The walls did not betray them. The system around the walls did. A real estate predator was never just one monster. He was a chain, a spotter, a helper, a notary, a broker, a doctor, a buyer, an official, a man with a folder outside the door. This case begins in Russia, but the warning is bigger than Russia. When a home becomes only an asset, the person inside it can become invisible. And once someone stops seeing you as a person living inside a home, they may start seeing you as the obstacle around the property.